Hello mga Kapinas TV. Sinabi ni papasok na US Secretary of State Marco Rubio na itigil na ang panghaharas ng China sa Pilipinas. Sinabi niya ito sa confirmation hearing sa Senado ng Amerika. Hindi raw ito makakatulong upang maayos ang relasyon ng China at Amerika.
But I think stability is critically important. Here's the one thing I would point to here with regards to stability. If the Chinese are in fact serious about stabilizing U.S.-China relations and finding avenues of which we can be cooperative and avoid conflict, then they will not do anything rash or irrational when it comes to Taiwan or the Philippines for that matter. The actions they are taking now are deeply destabilizing. They are forcing us to take counteractions because we have commitments to the Philippines and we have commitments to Taiwan that we intend to keep. And so if they want to destabilize the relationship, or they want to help at least create some pathway for stabilization of our relationship with them, even as we remain engaged in global competition, and in some cases more adversarial than others, they really need to stop messing around with Taiwan and with the Philippines, because it's forcing us to focus our attention in ways we prefer not to have to. Let's leave Taiwan out of it for a moment and say it's the Philippines. Okay, in the last 48 hours, there's this massive, I don't even know how to describe it, but this massive ship that the Chinese have built that's like headed towards the Philippines, and the Philippines feels threatened by it, rightfully so. We've seen this on a daily basis with the harassment and so forth, but on a daily basis. If, God forbid, there is some miscommunication or some inadvertent conflict emerges there, and we have obligations to them, the impact that will have on the entire globe, the impact that it will have on the entire globe is enormous, and that includes Europe. So they have a selfish, vested interest and seeking for the Chinese to curb their behaviors. I would also point to the Europeans that what the Russians have done with Ukraine would not have been possible without the assistance of China, whether it's the sharing of technology or aid in evading sanctions or selling their oil in secondary markets. The Chinese have been hidden, but clear to everyone watching, partners in the Russian endeavor.
Yeah.
And the Europeans know this, and they need to be continually reminded of it because it reveals the nature of who we're dealing with. I think it's important to take 30 seconds down memory lane. Hong Kong was turned over by the UK with a strong set of assurances that it would remain autonomous and independent. It would be governed by the Chinese, but independent. They would have a democracy. There would be free enterprise. They would be left alone. In essence, they would, that's the promises they made. They have violated over time, they violated every promise. They basically broke the deal. Just like they lied about all the island chains that they said they weren't going to populate and militarize, and they have done so as well. And so today we cannot consider Hong Kong to truly be autonomous anymore. It is not. It is now under the full control, especially on national security matters, of Chinese authorities. And it should not be surprising to us that these deeply rooted banking institutions that are in Hong Kong, who long had served as financial capital on the global scale, are now being used to the benefit of the Communist Party and to evade global sanctions. And I think there has to be a growing recognition of that. I also think it's important to remind those sectors in finance that are still involved there that the Chinese national security law that's now been implemented in Hong Kong allows them, if they don't like what you're doing, to basically trump up any charges they want, go into your offices, raid the boxes, see all of your files, threaten to jail you, and they've done so in some cases. So it's no longer a hospitable place for people to conduct financial activity. So I think we'd have to call it for what it is. The notion that Hong Kong is now some autonomous entity that operates within China's system but independent of it and the decisions they make is a complete work of fiction.
I'm glad you mentioned the Philippines. My theory of the case here is that not that China has decided that its risk appetite is higher, but rather that the things that they are doing are not so risky at all. And that's because we have not been in a position to impose consequences. And I think one of the places where we have a good and growing partnership, and obviously bilateral economic and treaty obligations, is the Philippines. And in addition to the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, and in addition to the Luzon Corridor economic partnerships, I'm just wondering how you see that growing democracy, one of our best allies on the planet, how you see that as strategically important for the United States.
Well, I think it's important. First of all, it's always been strategically important for the United States. Obviously, our military presence there diminished greatly as a result of some of the decisions that were made within the Philippines, but now you see a willingness to see us return. Look, we're not looking to militarize the Philippines, and this is not, I think it would be a mistake to solely view it as a security arrangement. There are long ties between the United States and Philippines that date back to 1899 in the Spanish-American War, and so I think it's important to build on that as well. I think there are real economic opportunities that we should be exploring, and so it's one that we need to show us commitment. If I'll be frank, I think where this kind of fell off was, and I'm not getting involved in internal Filipino politics, but I'm telling you, during Duterte, it was a little tougher to work with them, and obviously there's some issue going on there internally as well. I'll leave that to their electorate and their politics to solve. So I think to the extent that over the last few years you have seen a reinvigoration of American interests, it's not simply driven by the fact that the Chinese are harassing them. It's also driven by the fact that there's been a more welcoming attitude towards our posture and our position there. And that's one that when that opportunity presents itself, we should embrace, but then we need it to show results so that it becomes enduring. In essence, when your engagement with a country leads to economic development, whether it's outbound U.S. investment in the Philippines or what have you, then that becomes enduring. Then it makes it difficult, no matter who's in charge, to walk away from the alliance, because the alliance is more than just military and a military presence. It also involves jobs and businesses and investment and economic opportunity. And we need to look for ways to emphasize that. I think it would be a mistake to simply view it as a military or defense alliance.
Nagustuhan mo ba ang video? Huwag kalimutang mag-like, mag-subscribe at mag-share ng video. Hanggang sa muli.